Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I'm your host, Alec Lewis. This episode 86, recording on Wednesday, May 28th, a couple hours after the Vikings held what is their second OTA. It was the first one for us media being out there. And I've got a lot of thoughts from what I saw today from JJ McCarthy and from a bunch of the other guys on the roster that stood out to me in one way or another at this practice today. So stay tuned for the thoughts. As always, this show is presented by First Resource Bank. That's a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area. They got branches all over the place. And if you have any questions about First Resource Bank, first, reach out to me whenever. Second, the information is in the description below. You got their website, you got locations, you got hours. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson, they run the thing. They really care about this community. And so if you want a bank that is easy access, very easy to set up an account, also, invested in this community in Minneapolis, in the Vikings, I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys go check them out. If you have missed it, got a bunch of stories at The Athletic, some basketball stuff, some football stuff. We'll have a story probably posting Thursday morning on JJ McCarthy and what it was like watching him, listen to him, really for his first competitive practice since he got injured and tore his meniscus last fall. So please go check that out at The Athletic. And then if you're new here, watch on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts, you can follow and rate and review, do all that good stuff, and it helps us out. So I was looking forward to this. I'm not even going to lie to you. I was looking forward to being out at the TCO Performance Center in Eagan and getting some actual football things to talk about. I mean, obviously, I love the offseason. You could probably hear that in my voice. Both you go back at the combine, owners meetings, free agency, all that stuff is a blast. The draft is very fun. I love evaluating all those guys. But when you are out here in person and this entire Viking staff and all of the players and everybody, media, are back together observing this thing for 2 hours, it's always great. They pushed the practice inside today because of a little bit of rain, which I appreciated specifically for my gelled hair. But yeah, it was really great. It was great to see JJ McCarthy back under center, and we'll obviously start with him. Now, I'll just, on the front end here, I will say that I am not a pass charter. I don't, take reps of JJ McCarthy went 14 for 16 on the Wednesday midweek practice in May. It's just not how I approach the job because there's a lot of aspects to these passes, and I talked about this a little bit with Paul Allen on episode 85, the show before this one, where you don't know all of the route concepts. You only get to see the play once. You don't know what is being asked of JJ McCarthy from a drop standpoint, from a throw standpoint. You don't know if he's, operating from a trial and error perspective where his throw might not be the actual throw that he would attempt in game. And so to throw out a number, I think our minds and our brains, and you guys probably as fans, your brains are so conditioned to you see 6 for 11 and you think a certain way. So I guard against that. I obviously do watch most of the throws and did today watch every throw that JJ McCarthy made. And you're watching, at least for me, you're watching for how does the ball come off his hand? Does it look like the same zip that I've seen from Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold, some of the guys in the past? What does the layering of his throws look like? How does his base look? Is he accurate with his passes? Is he mobile, moving around fluidly? If he has to progress and maybe drift outside the pocket. So all of that is kind of what I have my eyes on. I'll also say that there's just not, it's mostly 7-on-7, just like any of the most competitive environment that JJ is going to see at a practice like this is like a 7-on-7 where there's no line of scrimmage. So you're not seeing a full pass rush. So evaluating a lot of this stuff, you have to take with a major grain of salt. And so for me, it's just kind of baseline checking. And really coming into today, it's like, how does all I knew how to approach it from my standpoint is, how does JJ McCarthy look compared to the guy that I saw last training camp, where he was really starting to turn not only my head and other media members' heads, but also the heads of staffs. I mean, I've said this and written this plenty of times, but the way he performed in the preseason game against the Raiders had him on a path to where the Vikings were going on the road to Cleveland for joint practices, and they were prepared to provide him more first-team reps. Not in the event that he was probably going to be the eventual starter week one, but to see more and more how he would stack up when you are in an opportunity where Myles Garrett is coming at you on the edge. So entering today, walking into this building today, that was the prism with which I viewed it. Is does the ball come off his hand with the same impressive zip that I saw last fall? Does he look comfortable and confident listening to the play calls, spitting them out, in the huddle with a bunch of veterans, with Justin Jefferson, who we'll get to at some point, with Jordan Addison, with all those guys here? Does he look comfortable, confident, poised, convicted? And then is he throwing the ball well over the middle? And I mean, the headline for me, or the takeaway for me, the summary for me, is that he looked exactly like, if I didn't know, if you'd have cut time off, you'd have just stopped time. You got the click, the movie remote, the controller, and you just paused it at that time. Let's just say, late July, August, and then you replay time right now, and you asked, like, what do you think changed? I would have probably responded, he probably is more familiar with the system. But other than that, from a mechanic standpoint, from the way the ball came out of his hand, like it was everything that I hoped to see. And what I would say, like, again, it's so early, and there's just so much that, checkpoints that need to be hit over time from this point forward. But just speaking right now, after watching him in his real first competitive environment since last fall, it was great to see him look like the guy that we had started to see. Like I could run through a ton of different throws. There are some that stay in my mind of, it's a 7-on-7 rep, Jalen Naylor fade down the right sideline, and JJ drops the back shoulder. There's some over the middle, like second in the progression, third of progression, just, the zip on the throws, the way the ball spirals. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to go overboard. I'm not going to try to generate a headline with this. I'm not trying to, sensationalize anything. But there's no question that he can put some serious arm strength on these passes, specifically on end breakers, where he just looks very comfortable. And he did at Michigan. You go back and watch the film, and it's the end breakers over the middle of the field that he looks so comfortable. And one of the throws from today that I'll probably remember was kind of like a corner route towards the right sideline with tight end Bryson Nesbitt, who's this undrafted guy from North Carolina. And I don't know specifically what defense the Vikings were running on this specific rep. It felt kind of like a cover two-ish hole, and JJ McCarthy tried to fit it in to the hole on the right sideline, and it whizzed right over the top of Bryson Nesbitt's fingertips. It was nearly completed, but I thought, it was interesting to see JJ, and really good, I think, to see JJ try to layer that throw in that window, in that spot. And I felt like he got it up a little bit. I remember last fall, like if you'd asked me back then, so what is JJ working on a daily basis? It was obviously, some of the obvious answers you'd get were like he's assimilating the playbook. He's learning the Vikings concepts. He's learning what the Vikings call certain concepts that he ran back in Michigan. But there were other answers that you get, like footwork. He has his left foot up, whereas at Michigan he had his right foot up. Certain drops are at different distances than he had it at Michigan. And then the other aspect that was maybe the biggest was JJ's ability to layer throws. And you guys might be asking, like, what do you mean by that? Well, it's, I mean, the way it's been described to me best is to think of it like a golfer. Like JJ can rip a stinger 2-iron off the tee, and he can drill a 5-iron from very far out on a very lengthy par 4. But the challenges for him, or just the growth that was going to be coming, was like, can he get the 9-iron up and over? Can he get the pitching wedge up and over when he needs to? And so for me, to see him attempt the throw that I just mentioned to Bryson Nesbitt in the hole, like that's as much of, as positive as anything, to just see the willingness to attempt the trial and error at a time where I'm sure internally for him, like, he wants to compete on every rep. I'm sure he wants to prove to these coaches time and time again that he is worthy of being the starter. And so to have the comfort and the conviction that if I make a mistake here trying to do something that is going to help me in the long run, that I'm not going to be dinged from it. And in fact, I'm going to, improve as a byproduct of it. That to me, that just stuff like that was great to see. But there was a lot of, Jalen Naylor slants. There were outbreaking routes from Jordan Addison with anticipation. There's one that comes to my mind towards the end of the practice where he tried Jordan Addison with anticipation. There's another ball, maybe the most impressive throw of the day, actually, where from the right hash, he tries an outbreaker to Jordan Addison on the wide side of the field, and the defender, the cornerback, is closing on Jordan Addison, but J.J. McCarthy has enough arm strength to get it all the way to him. Just an impressive throw, and some from this practice that I'll remember. I mean, again, like the summary, the headline, the tagline is like, he just resembled the guy that he looked like late last year when I think everybody started to get excited for what he could become. I thought, like, he talked for 10 minutes afterwards, and the media asked him questions, obviously. And one of the best questions I thought was asked by Julie Daniels of Care 11. And she asked, like, how do you balance, this was to JJ, like, how do you balance, JJ, you're eager to be back on the field and to prove that you are everything that everyone hopes you are, while also, like, not going overboard with the eagerness and being patient enough in certain plays and certain reps and certain practices. And JJ complimented the question, and he went on to say a bunch of things. And then he ended kind of with this quote where he said, everyone wants to be perfect, especially at the quarterback position. The more you try to be perfect, it's going to kill you more than your imperfections will. And that is like the type of quote from him that you would get last year, where it's philosophical. It probably comes from like a Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or Derek Jeter. Like, which I'll say this, and if you've read my work going back to last year, you know that I went last summer. I was in Chicago just for fun, but I went and spent the day with J.J. McCarthy's dad right outside of Chicago, where they live, at their house, and sitting on their back porch, where there was funny, like the back porch at JJ's house. It was just kind of like they didn't care to really clean it up for a media member, which I thought was awesome because it was just organic and natural. There were hockey sticks out there because that's the sport that JJ used to play and still really, really loves. There was like a basketball court out in the backyard, but we sat kind of on the back porch, and his dad showed me this photo of, before one of the JJ has a like a whiteboard in his room back home, and he did growing up, and like he, before a playoff game one year in high school, had all of these, he drew late at night, like all of this stuff on his whiteboard, and it was reminders about the game. It was, tendencies of the opponent. And then there were quotes from guys like Kobe and just some of the elite competitors ever. Like, so he studies that stuff. And so it felt like that quote derives from it. He also, JJ mentioned Greg Harden, the late Greg Harden, who was a legend at Michigan in terms of like working with athletes and their mental frame of mind and their psyche and stuff like that. So like to hear that quote from JJ just felt very him. And so to see the player look like the player that I remember last fall, and then to hear him feel as comfortable as he seemed to feel and providing the perspective of a quote like that, the way that he typically would, I thought, it's all good signs. I mean, the only other aspect with JJ that I think it's probably right to mention that I'm propelled to want to mention is just listening to Kevin O'Connell talk about this Viking staff and their approach to reintegrating JJ kind of back into things. I commend them for the process that it feels like they're taking within this. And, sometimes Kevin O'Connell and his views on quarterback development are widely known, widely talked about. But the one aspect that I'm not sure I have done a good enough job of like explaining or providing, just knowing how Kevin and this staff views quarterback development, is they don't want this to be easy for JJ McCarthy. Like they don't want him to arrive at these practices, know all the play calls that they're going to provide him, make all of the easy throws that he operates within. No, like they want him to show up and be challenged every single day, and not to the point that it breaks the confidence. I mean, that's where it's a delicate. That's where the best coaches, thrive in that delicate balance of how do we push a certain person, and it's really like not even just coaching. It's like any boss, any job, any employment in life. It's how do you navigate being able to push somebody to reach their maximum output, but also not break them in the process of doing that. And I think that's like, when we talk about what the Vikings have done with quarterbacks, like it's living within that space in the best way that they've probably done better than most. But like even today, Kevin O'Connell said that, well, two things. He said at the front end of this practice and all of these OTAs practices, he and Josh McCown agreed that like they're not going to take anything for granted. They're not going to assume anything with JJ. And that works two ways. They're not going to assume that he doesn't know everything with the playbook, but they're also not going to assume that he knows everything with the playbook. So it is that they have wanted to pass along and provide him with certain instances to monitor his progress. And Kevin said, like, there have been times already through OTAs where it's, man, JJ surprised us. How did he remember that conversation that we had in week 11? And there have been other times where it's like, we might have thought JJ would have known that, but this is great because this is a great time to go over an essential detail to smooth over for the future. I mean, that they have allowed for just like, fluid growth. And I said there were two things. The other aspect of this that I think is very worth mentioning is Kevin said on Wednesday that they have given JJ and they have implemented a lot of the playbook for now. And again, this is part of like why go in such incremental steps when you can challenge, when you can observe and evaluate over time. And so I wanted to obviously talk about JJ and what I saw and what I heard from him today. And so I hope we hit that head on. But I also just think it's important to highlight the way in which Kevin is viewing this development. I think that's part of why, as he's gone on interviews with Rich Eisen and people I have the utmost respect for, and Kay Adams and others, and they ask him, like, why hasn't JJ been named the starter? Is he the starter? Does this mean any hesitation? I don't think Kevin wants to just hand it to the guy because it's a position that should be earned. And it's a position that should be earned every single day. And you earn that by navigating instances of growth. That doesn't mean there's not going to be times where he doesn't get the play, where JJ doesn't get the play call 100% right. That doesn't mean there are going to be times where he doesn't throw interceptions over the middle. It just means that all of these experience lead to what Kevin said is something much bigger, and that is the opportunity that comes when the season arrives. And so it was cool to hear Kevin talk a little bit about that today, but it's not something that I have gone over a lot in terms of how much Kevin believes competition and, challenging fuels quarterback development. And so it's just an important aspect that I thought I'd mention. Some other stuff that I wanted to get to from what I saw today. And I wrote down a bunch of nuggets. So we're just going to rattle off a lot of this. And some of this is off the cuff, so we'll see where it goes. The first thing, Jalen Nailor. So Jalen Nailor switched numbers from 83 to 1. And I've always been a guy, like, when I see players with single-digit numbers, I think there's some psychological thing that happens in my mind where it makes them seem like faster or quicker or more jittery or lighter on their feet. Like when you see a defensive lineman who wears number 6 or number 8 or what have you, for me, it's always like that guy must be explosive. And I've said that going back. I remember when I lived in Kansas City and covered the Kansas City Royals baseball team, Jerick McKinnon played for the Chiefs at the time, and this was like early Patrick Mahomes era. And I think he was number 1. I always said, like, gosh, he seems so much faster than he probably is. It just felt that way. So Jalen Nailor switches from 83 to 1. So you're probably assuming that I'm about to say, man, he looks faster. Well, Jalen Nailor, his nickname is Speedy, okay? Like, this guy has always looked fast. He doesn't look. It's like my brain has been breaking about this since I walked out of the indoor facility a few hours ago. Jalen Nailor looks like, more stout. His legs look bigger. He looks. I mean, I joked with somebody, and like I really don't want this to get aggravated but his body type wearing the number 1 today, like almost looked like Deebo Samuel to me. I know that's like going way overboard. I really hope that doesn't get aggregated because that's really going, like, it just would be wild, I think, for people to hear that. And so hopefully for the podcast listeners, you get to enjoy that little bit of morsel of information. But he looked great. Like, I don't say that like he's gotten stockier and slower. Like, it was just like he spent a lot of time in the gym before he got back to Minnesota. And I don't know if that opens the door for different insert blocking plays in the run game. I don't know if that opens the door toward getting him the ball in the backfield on, jet sweeps. I don't know. All I know is it stood out to me, and I just wanted to bring it to you guys' attention. It's something I'm going to kind of watch, but he looked great today. I mentioned there were some slants over the middle from JJ. There was the back shoulder that I mentioned earlier, but he just looked good. And obviously we're going to see what happens, with Jordan Addison. Will he get suspended? How many games? That would obviously, Jalen Nailor's role would obviously increase in that circumstance. But it stood out to me, so I wanted to say it. Silas Bolden, he was an undrafted signee who returned kicks and punts, Oregon State, Texas. Was paid a pretty hefty guaranteed sum to sign with the Vikings, and he now wears 83. So Jalen Nailor's former number. And there were some, punt instances, punt return, and the wiggle of this guy just looked different as a returner than anything I've seen in the 3 years that I've covered this team. And it's not, I really didn't focus on him a ton or watch him a ton during rookie minicamp. And so just getting to see him out there. There was also a couple catches he made down the sideline. Just a really, not a big guy, obviously, but a really twitchy athlete. So I can't wait to watch him. I hope we get to see some more punt return, kick returns. Like, he could be a guy in some of those preseason games who's just going to be enjoyable to watch, but he stood out to me, and so just thought I'd mention that. Javon Hargrave was out there. The Vikings, like in some of their 7-on-7, and stuff, there were some like first team instances where you got to see where certain guys lined up. Like on the offensive line, there were instances where Justin School, the signee, was the left tackle. Donovan Jackson was at left guard. Ryan Kelly was at center. Blake Brandell was at right guard, and then Brian O'Neill was at right tackle. I saw Walter Rouse at right tackle in spurts. Josh Metellus didn't practice today, so you saw Jay Ward at times. The cornerbacks, it was often Isaiah Rodgers didn't practice today, so it was often Byron Murphy Jr., Jeff Okudah, Mekhi Blackman. You would see Dwight McGlothern every now and then. Harrison Smith practiced. Theo Jackson was back there practicing. But Javon Hargrave, massive guy. This guy, he's wide now. I mean, he is a big guy. But him standing next to Jonathan Allen, you could just start to imagine and picture what this thing might look like from a defensive standpoint. And there was already like some rumblings. I can't remember if it was Kevin O'Connell who said it or Andrew Van Ginkel talked today and he said it, but you started to hear that like Brian Flores and the staff, they're doing some morphing of the schemes. There's some trial and error around this time about doing some different stuff. So, I mean, I don't know what they've got cooking up, but they do. There were a couple periods where it was like split field, and on one side of the field, it was like the starters type quality of players. And then on the other side of the field, it was like more of the bench, like second, third team, like, depth later on the depth chart players. I thought on the starter group, there were some times where I saw Jalen Redmond next to Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, next to Harrison Phillips, which was interesting to me. I mean, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, his body type stands out. So does Tyler Baddies, just a very big guy who was working with the edge rusher group for a little bit, which I thought was interesting. Jeff Okudah, I mentioned him, but I mean, he's obviously gigantic at corner. Like there were some it was a couple times where I saw him standing next to Mekhi Blackman, and obviously those guys are two very different corners with their skill sets. Okudah, he thrives off press and using his length and physicality. Mekhi Blackman's more just feisty ball skills, that type of player. But Okudah is massive, and just to see him out there, it was interesting. TJ Hawkinson, like we haven't talked a ton about his season last year, and obviously he came back from the ACL. I do remember it being at Soldier Field late in that Bears game, and he just came up with some huge catches late in that game over the middle. And then obviously like there were some drops and stuff probably down the stretch of the season, but he looked like he was just tip-top shape already. And again, this is just my eye, and I don't know what people will think of it or what have you, but I just felt like seeing him on the field, TJ Hawkinson, the way he moved, like he looked fast, he looked sudden, he looked quick. He's probably gonna be out to prove a lot this year, having kind of the odd type of season as it was coming back from the injury. So thought that would be worth the note. And then I mean Justin Jefferson, like I just want to say, he hasn't come to a lot of these voluntary OTAs the last couple of years. There was like for a time there's the contract stuff, so he didn't really. I mean, it didn't really make any sense. I know he was doing like a media thing at one point, probably in Brazil. He had some media commercial stuff at one point when he missed a couple of years ago, I think down in Florida. But like he does not have to be here. And he is out on the field partaking in reps, going full speed. And you hear it all the time that like Justin's energy affects the rest of the way everybody else works. Kevin O'Connell said today, like when other players see him going at the speed and the intensity that he is, it really drives up the level of competitiveness. But I mean, like it says a lot. Justin's talked in the past few years about, he wanted to be a captain. And like that was really important to him. And he's talked about it, but he's also proven that with his actions. I mean, the way he's talked about the quarterback situations over the years and the savvy nature with which he's just kind of like let the decision makers go about that on their own volition, while also providing his own perspective behind the scenes in a much more classy manner. I mean, like, you see stuff around the league and have in the last couple of days about certain receivers doing certain things. And I just constantly am reminded, like, this guy is in Minnesota. Yes, he is attending the Wolves game with his father, John, and his brother, Jordan. And then he's showing up to workouts and going full speed in May, knowing that it will enhance the work ethic and the energy of everybody else, but also knowing that he's probably going to be, JJ McCarthy, to get reps with him, and how much that helps the timing for both those guys. Like, you just can't ever, and I talk about this because you just can't ever minimize the value that a team derives from their best player being a guy willing to do this type of stuff in an industry and in a league where a lot of guys care a lot about flash, and a lot of guys care a lot about enjoying their time off. And Justin does care about both those. You see him dress, and he is very intentional and very strategic with some of his wardrobe choices and going to the Met Gala and all that stuff. And he does enjoy time away, and he attends soccer games, and I'm sure he has a good time. But I mean, for him to be here and to just see him in person, blazing off the line of scrimmage, full speed, you just can't imagine like the exponential effect that has, both for the now and for the future. And I mean, Kevin O'Connell talked about that, but it's just pretty obvious when you see it. As far as like other notes, I mean, Dallas Turner, he looked a little bit bigger for sure, and he looked really good. And he was running with the ones oftentimes. Like, there were times there was Grenard in him. There was times, if I'm not mistaken, 7-on-7 where he was playing some off ball, kind of next to Ivan Pace and Eric Wilson. So just can't wait to see what he looks like when it's full speed and he gets to rush the passer and kind of use his skill set. Because I know, talking to people around him, like, he is chopping at the bit to continue to improve. And he's still such a young guy. I mean, I didn't look this up, but I'm going to right now. Dallas Turner, mind you, was born February 2nd, 2003. So he just turned 22 years old. And I was looking it up, like, JJ is 22 years old too. He's a year younger than Anthony Edwards. So just kind of, it blows your mind sometimes. But that's about it from the first time being on OTAs. We'll be back out there next week. I'll have more for you guys. Mini camp in the coming weeks. Can't wait to continue to watch to see how this team kind of progresses. It's going to be very, very interesting. Hope you enjoyed the show. As always, the Alec Lewis Show is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area. If you are interested in sponsoring this thing as we keep rolling 2 times a week into the season, you can email me, aleclewis54@gmail.com. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, hit the like button, follow, rate, review, all that stuff on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart. And then please don't forget, at The Athletic, where I do my day job covering this team, nonstop stories, some features to come in the coming weeks on some big editions of the offseason. So stay tuned. Keep it locked in. Appreciate you guys being here on Wednesday evening, Thursday, May 28th, May 29th, for episode 86 of the Alec Lewis Show. We will talk to you guys very, very soon.